Tervetuloa Ustavani. Welcome to another episode of Finnish Photo Fridays, which I might as well call Finnish Photo whenever Matt actually remembers what day of the week it is. My apologies, I know it's Monday, there's been a little bit of a delay, I've been getting over a cold. Once again, I'm your host, Matt DiRisio, author of Finnish Mosin-Nagant, 3-line rifle, the Ukko Pukka, and today we have an incredible image that once again highlights some of the more unique firearms used by the Finnish Army during World War II, and also highlights some of their lesser known, less glamorous activities. So today's photo is from October of 1941, and it was taken in the Utti Training Center barracks. And Utti was an important training ground for new recruits and older reservists that were receiving refresher training, both prior to the start of World War II for Finland and during the Winter War and the Continuation War. And in this photograph, we can see several Finnish soldiers, likely conscripts during their initial training, holding their rifles up for an inspection during close order drill. And what are they holding? No, my friend, those are not Mosin-Nagant rifles. They are not any of the various flavors of Mosin-Nagant used by Finland. Instead, they're holding the much maligned, non-standard Italian Carcano Model 1938, or the M38 in Finnish service. As we take a closer look at this image, we can see the Finnish Army recruits lined up informally. They've got their Carcano M38 rifles at their sides, and you can also see that they've got the bayonets out of the scabbard and they've got the bolts out of the rifle. There's a reason for each one of those things, in my opinion. I have to assume that they've got the bolt out of the rifle because there's a gentleman at the end of the line, probably an NCO or an officer of some kind, who's inspecting the rifles and checking the bores to see if the soldiers cleaned them, and they most likely have the bayonets out of the scabbards to see if they've cleaned the dirt and grime and everything else off of them and that they're presentable. Now, one of these soldiers' bayonets looked a little bit grimy to me there, probably the second or third individual away from the NCO that's doing the checks. But other than that, I mean, nothing too out of the ordinary. This is pretty normal. Any army's going to use older rifles or non-standard systems for training. I can remember going through basic and having a nice M16A2 musket. One other note on the wall, it says sotolat, that would be soldiers. I assume it's some kind of address to the soldiers. And the other one, probably some kind of propaganda or news photograph on the wall, or maybe some kind of even identification poster. Really hard to say, but neat photo. Don't see a lot of the photos of the Carcano in use, and a lot of them are like this, training photos or rear area troops carrying them around. As noted, the rifle in the soldier's hands is the Carcano M38, a short rifle originally developed in Italy and based on earlier Carcano rifle variants. These were chambered for the non-standard Italian 7.35 by 51 ammunition, a caliber that the Italians were trying to transition to before the war forced them back to the more familiar and older 6.5 by 52 round. Because of this, a large inventory of these new Carcano rifles in 7.35 became available at a very affordable price, and suffering from a desperate shortage of rifles and equipment during the Winter War, Finland was the ideal buyer and purchased 100,000 of them from Italy. Unfortunately, these rifles did not arrive in time before the end of the Winter War in March of 1940, and it's doubtful that they would have made any difference in the war's outcome anyways. Eventually, some 94,500 Carcano rifles arrived in Finland during the summer of 1940. Given the lack of standardization for this ammunition and new caliber, the rifles were usually issued to non-frontline troops like field artillery, air defense artillery, coastal artillery, and supply units. They were also used for training new recruits, like the soldiers seen in this photo. You can see the rifles in the photo also have the unusual folding blade bayonet that this variant of the Carcano came with, and the blade is in the open and fixed position. Among Finnish soldiers, the Carcano M38 quickly earned a poor reputation, was simply called the Terni, after the name of the most common manufacturer, Fabbrica d'Armi de Terni. And the primary issue was the fixed, non-adjustable rear sight, as well as the in-block stripper clip. So the Finnish soldiers were trained to properly zero their rifles, and this was an essential part of being battle-ready. Finnish soldiers took pride in their marksmanship, and the M38 sights were typically set for a fixed distance of around 200 meters. This was meant to hit a target at short ranges, say 150 to 300 meters, and Soldiers had to hold off and shift their point of aim, making accurate fire at longer distances more difficult and robbing soldiers of confidence in their weapon, not to mention the non-standard ammunition, the in-block stripper clips that were unique to this weapon, which it was effectively a single-shot weapon without them. And there were requests by Finnish soldiers to add adjustable sights. We'll have a video on that later on. VKT was tasked with making them, but the war progressed before too many of them had been built. Adding to the rifle's poor reputation were some issues with the 7.35 by 51 ammunition. It was blunt-nosed somewhat, and it's believed the projectile was ballistically unstable due to a design feature where an aluminum cavity in the nose was meant to make the bullet tumble on impact. While this likely improved terminal ballistics, it might have made the bullet less stable in flight, particularly if quality control, which Italy was known for terrific quality control. Just watch Drakenfeld's videos on the Vittorio Veneto battleships and their propellant that was in their shells, subject for another time, and likely led to larger shot dispersions. So the rifle also suffered from a design flaw in the Carcano bolt that could allow the firing pin to be accidentally decocked during operation. Useful stuff like that. Bottom line was that Finnish soldiers simply didn't trust the Terni, or the M38, whatever we want to call it, one bit. And whenever a soldier was issued an M38 and had the chance to switch it out, he usually did. There's a lot of pictures of piles of Mosin-Nagants, and if you look closely, there's some M38 Carcanos thrown there and discarded. Probably should do a video on that at some point, where soldiers are just using battlefield pickups from the Soviet Red Army and changing out the weaponry they were originally handed. The Finnish army generally removed the M38 from frontline service by the fall of 1941, although they later pulled some unissued Carcano rifles out of their packing crates and gave them to civilians near the eastern border for self-defense against Soviet partisan attacks. But that's a story for a future Finnish Photo Fridays. In conclusion, this image of the Carcano M38 in Finnish service shows us the most important thing that it did for the Finnish war effort. It existed. And it existed in large numbers and freed up Mosin-Nagant variants for frontline usage by the Finnish army. So, what do you think? Did the Finns get a bad deal on the M38? Was there another rifle they could have acquired that would have been better? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like this episode, please hit that like button, subscribe for more Finnish history and firearms content. Until next time, kiitos ja nähdään pian taas.